All right. And we're live.
Hey.
All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Vendoo's Reseller podcast. We're here today to talk about scaling your reseller business with Jen from Jen's Addiction on Instagram, YouTube, whatnot, Poshmark, everywhere. Vendoo is your one-stop shop for all things e-commerce. On the podcast, we dive into strategies, tools, and success stories that will help take your reselling business to the next level. If you're a reseller looking to scale your online business, or you're just starting out and you're curious about the reselling world, then you've come to the right place. Make sure to take a moment to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any future episodes. And with that, we will get right into it. Welcome, Jen. Thank you for being on the podcast. And can you just give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, thank you, first of all, for having me. So I am a full-time reseller. We've been doing this for about almost 6 years. And we kind of just jumped right into it. So we sell on a variety of different platforms, and I'm excited to be here and answer questions. And
Awesome. Upon hearing that you were our guest today, lots of people were very excited. They see you on Whatnot. One of the primary ways, a lot of times people tell me that they watch your Whatnot shows. And I was watching your YouTube videos, and I learned that you got your start selling on Facebook Marketplace, quickly scaled that into a full-time business for not only yourself, but for your husband too. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey from Facebook Marketplace sales to pallet flipping?
Yeah, we can go back there. So going back to the beginning of reselling, my husband at the time, he worked at a company called Vivint, and he did sales for them. And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, had a couple of little kids. And my husband kind of heard about this whole pallet thing. And so he went out, picked up 2 pallets, parked them in the garage, and said, see if you can sell these on Facebook Marketplace. So that first week, he spent, I think, $400 on the 2 pallets, $200 each. And so I just go out and I started looking up these boxes. And at the time, it's like home goods and furniture and bedding and like all kinds of random stuff. And I'm not going to assemble all this stuff. I'm not putting it all together. And so I start looking up the codes and information on the box, put that together, type it in Google, search it, find stock photos, put that on Facebook Marketplace. And in that first week, I'd sold $1,100 and still had items left over. So he took that and then reinvested that following week, picked up a couple more, brought them back. Within a very short amount of time, it had taken over our garage, come into the house, filled a spare bedroom, and we're at the point where we were opening a storage unit. It kind of happened fast for us. And initially, it wasn't clothing and shoes and bags like we do now. It was all kinds of the big heavy stuff that really take up a lot of space. So that's how we got started with this.
That's amazing. And I like the concept of reinvesting in your business. And a lot of times we tell people you do not have to have tons of money to get started in reselling.
Right.
You just have to start and then be ready to reinvest profits.
Right. Yeah.
For sure. What is some advice that you can give to part-time resellers who are looking to go full-time? Like, what's like 3 or 4 things that you're like, okay, we had to have this, and this in place, or we were not going to, quit our day jobs?
I think for us, first, we had to prove it to ourselves that it was possible to see the kind of income we needed. So we needed to make sure that we could count on it and rely on it. So it took about 3 months before we were really able to see like consistent, like see the numbers that we needed. But then we continued to do that for another 6 months before we're like, okay, let's go ahead and take the plunge. I'm kind of a person where I'm like, let's just jump in and get to work and work our butts off. And so I think there's a couple different personality types. Like my brother, he runs his own business, and he's been running it for about 5 years, doing really good numbers, but he's kept his full-time job the same time. And he's planning on spring of next year quitting that full-time job. So he's finally going to make that leap. And he's had to prove it to himself over a long time to make sure the numbers were really there for him, where we kind of did it a little bit faster before we jumped into it. Um, I feel like some of the things that are really important to me, if you're looking to go from part-time to full-time, um, being aware that it's going to be a lot of work. I've seen so many people get started and struggle with it or do it for a while and then phase out. And I feel like not enough of us are honest and upfront about the fact that we face that day in, day out with what we're doing. It's a lot. I mean, you've got access to your phone and your computer and your iPad and all this different technology, which is amazing. But that means you've got customers messaging you. You've got people asking questions. You've got the ability to look up sources and buy pallets and, all these different resources and tools. And you have to be very careful with your time and your energy and make sure that you are taking care of yourself and you're taking that break and you're setting those boundaries so you can keep yourself sane. So if you're looking into doing this full time, just be aware that it can be a lot all at the same time. So yeah, that's one thing that comes to mind for me.
Okay. Yeah. And I love what you said about giving up too quickly too, because I feel like a lot of people, when they're starting something new, if it doesn't work right away, they get frustrated and stop. And a lot of times they quit right before it would have
Yes.
Took off for them.
Right. Yep. One of my favorite quotes is, "The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit." Like you've got to plant, you've got to list those items and work today for sales that are going to happen 6, 8 months, a year from now. And you've got to believe it and build it and keep working at it. And yeah, it takes a lot of putting a lot of time and energy into it for it to then pay off. And you have to feel those rewards. And then you have to keep at it. Once those sales start to come in, that's not when you take the break. You actually have to keep going. So it does take a lot, but I absolutely love it.
Great. So what does a typical day in your life look like right now at the point you're at right now?
It depends on if we're talking about a Monday or a Wednesday. We have a lot of different things. Mondays are always our biggest shipping days. So those ones feel a little bit more chaotic. Right now, it is me, my husband, and my daughter. She's a full-time employee currently, and she does a lot of our packing and shipping. So if we've got that, kind of sorted out, a typical day for me, I'm going to come in. The very first thing I do is I come into my office in here and I'm on Vendoo. So I use Vendoo at least 5 days a week, sometimes more than that. It's the first place I go because I want to check my inventory that's coming in. So we have an interesting process with the amount of inventory we have coming in, keeping track of it, and kind of compartmentalizing. Some of it is going to come in and it's going to be run through a live show and it goes out the door before it's ever coming into, a system like this. So we still keep track of numbers, but we're not itemizing every single item. Other groups of inventories, we get it in, every item is going to be photographed. It's going to be it's photographed right into Vendoo and stored in there as a draft. And then it's completed. I have a VA that helps me with that. So he's going to look over all that information, complete all the details. And so when I come in the morning, I'm going to review his work, the photos, make any edits, adjust any price, and then push those items out to Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Depop, Grailed, whatnot, all the different places. So, so I come in here, I'll spend probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours going over those. And that's anywhere between 10 to 20 items that I'm updating. And then I'm also delisting and relisting inventory to keep that, all the inventory that's been in there kind of fresh and current and, to where it's being seen on all these different platforms. Then in the afternoon, I've got a 4-year-old that's here with me. And so he's definitely going to come in my office multiple times throughout the day. He needs mom's attention. And I love that I can, at any point in time, I can be in the middle of something, but then I can also say, I'm going to step away from this and I'm going to go make a sandwich and I'm going to go read a book and I'm going to go be a mom, because that is the whole reason I've worked as hard as I have, is so I have the freedom to also take those time and be there with him. So yeah, so I can step away, or if there's a school activity, or, my kids get home at 2:00 and it's like, all right, put this away and go and be a mom and run around. And then a lot of the time we're doing live shows in the evening, getting set up for those, going through the inventory. I don't know if this is like a very structured, this is my day, but I feel like each day we kind of like figure out, okay, what the plan is, what our goals are for the day, the week, and each of us kind of target the different things that we need. So Dan is going out and picking up inventory, where I'm coming in here and reviewing this, and Lexi's working on shipping the inventory. So yeah, a little bit of everything. We run around like a little bit of an organized chaos, unorganized
I was
chaos.
going to say, so it's structured chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little structure in there, but a lot of it, I feel like you have to be able to be flexible with this.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're doing a lot of different things. You're selling on the marketplaces and you're doing live selling.
Yes.
So on the marketplaces that you're listening to, which marketplaces are you currently utilizing?
Right now, my top performing marketplaces currently are, I mean, if we're not talking live shows,
Mhm.
it would be Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Grailed, a little bit of Depop, um, and occasionally some StockX sales. So that's about where our time and energy is going into. We do list most of it right to Poshmark and eBay. That's where we're getting a lot of our sales. So that's where more of my time and energy goes to.
And then, so Vendoo actually does integrate with Whatnot. We do more on the marketplace side so that you can have things in your marketplace. But Whatnot, of course, also offers live selling, which is where I find your shows all the time. I'm a frequent shopper of Jen's Addiction. So, what drew you guys to the Whatnot platform for your live sales?
Yeah, live shows. When I first heard about that, I was like, "Nuh-uh, not doing that. Heck no. I don't want anything to do with that." And then I had a friend reach out to me, and she's like, "Jen, you need to do this." And I'm like, "Mm-mm." I still was like, "No, nope." I just my whole life, I don't know. I've never been the person on camera. I kind of shy away from it. It's something I'm still getting used to. So it was really foreign to me and definitely outside my comfort zone. I would prefer to like, let me just take some photos and list this and just like, do some fun, cutesy social media stuff and not really be like me on the camera. But it was when I was approached by that friend and she was really like, Jen, no, you really need to look at this. It was right at a turning point where we were closing down one of our businesses. Back then we ran a business where we were packing and shipping inventory to other resellers. And so we would pack those inventory boxes and ship that out to them. And we had reached a point where we had decided to kind of shift things, no longer offer that service and just kind of go in-house as far as like photographing, listing, and just kind of running it through and kind of scale it back a little bit. But we had at the time a surplus of inventory. We've got so much of it because of those businesses and how we've been running it that it's like, okay, let's go ahead and give it a shot. And so I jumped on, really just kind of taking a chance. And I think I was on for an hour, my very first show. I did not do any trainings. I did not, I had never watched somebody else's full show. I had not been on the app at all. When I first signed up, I went in, I applied to be a seller, and I went into one show and I was watching it, and it was probably like sneaker shows, and it was a little over the top for my personal style. And I ended up closing out the app, and I'm like, I'll just wait and see if I hear back from him. Because back then it was really hard to become a seller. And within a couple of days, I got the notification that I was approved as a seller. And so I just scheduled it, did the training, scheduled it, and really didn't think about it. I'm one that I tend to not do a whole lot of homework. I'm like, let me just, like this morning for this call, you were so great in sending me a list of like some of the questions so I could read over those. So when you sent that, what was that, 4 or 5 days ago, I printed it out and I glanced over it, but then I just didn't want to be stuck in my head. So it wasn't until this morning that I sat down and just read through it. Because I feel like if I study too much, I overthink and I mess. So it's better if I just kind of have the basics and like just jump in and do it. Yeah, so I did my first show. I think we sold like 25 items. We sold every single item in the show, my very first show. So it was a sold out show. I think I had 22 people in there. I sold a Michael Kors coat. It was a $1,200 brand new with tags, gorgeous trench coat. And I was so happy to sell it. I think it sold for like $30. So it's like, that's not great numbers, but we'd had it for 2 hours or 2 years. We'd we'd recouped our total investment of that pallet. So at that time it was just sitting around and we were like, let's just clear out some of this. And so it was still great to let it go. So that was, 2 years ago on Whatnot. It was our very first show. And I think we've done them pretty much every week since.
What are some tips that you can give to anyone who's brand new to the Whatnot platform, from like maybe how to grow their audience or how to run their shows, anything you can think of?
Yeah, I would say, so Dan and I have talked about this a lot. There's a lot of people that feel like they need to do live selling. And I really, like, we've talked about it, and it's like, you don't necessarily need to do live selling. There's still a lot of great platforms where you can have a lot of amazing sales on those. We have higher average sale price on the ones that we photograph, list, store, and wait for the right buyer. So we're going to get a lot more on those. It's just because we have so much that it allows us to reach a broader audience, and we've got some margins there that we're okay letting it go a little bit lower. So you've kind of got to weigh your circumstances. If you have access to some good inventory, you've got quite a bit of it, running shows can be a great thing. And if that's the way you're going to go, make sure you start your price where you're not going to lose money. Like, I've heard other people where they're like, nope, you just have to plan on losing money for the first 3 months. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. If you really want to build an audience and you don't want to go in debt, and you want to run those shows and do low starts to kind of get the crowd, there's ways of doing that, of getting inventory literally free. So you can do that while you're building your audience and then bring your other inventory in. So I have tips on that specific thing if you need to know how to get some good inventory, but don't start at a point where you're going to lose. You should start where you're okay if it goes at that, and then be excited about it. And you've got to let everybody know what you're doing. If you're not excited about what you're doing, how is somebody else going to be excited about what you're doing? So that means tell your friends, tell your family, tell your Facebook post, create a social media account and be present on there, build relationships, and let everybody know that you're on there and what you're doing, and get them to come in and show support. There's a lot of different ways of showing support. They don't have to come in and buy everything you're selling. They can come in and just chat with you and help calm your nerves on those shows. And that's going to do a lot for those first shows as you're first building. So yeah, kind of ease into it, and don't be afraid to let everybody know what you're doing.
Definitely. And then before we move on to the next topic, you mentioned you had some tips on where people could get free inventory if they're just starting out. Let's go ahead and add that real quick.
Let's just jump into that. I've mentioned this to a few different people, and it actually came up at PoshFest last week when I was chatting with a couple of ladies at a table. If I thought about this a lot, like if they were to do a reality TV show and they brought all these amazing sellers from, because there's pallet sellers like me, and then there's those who know how to thrift. They know how to go and like hunt the wild and find amazing brands. I'm not as skilled at that as they are, so there's so many different types of resellers. And I think that's what I love about this. But if we were stripped of all of that, we were, all of that's gone. All you have is your phone. This is your access to all your social media and your platforms, your Vendoo, everything's on your device. Where do you start? And what I would do is I would create a post, just put like a photo. You could Google a photo if you don't want to take a photo of yourself, of a pile of clothing, or gather up some stuff around your house and take a photo of it. So I would take one photo just for attention. And I would put this on Facebook because that's where my experience came from way back before I started reselling. So join your local Facebook groups for your city, surrounding cities, and especially the more expensive areas that you live in, so join those, be part of those groups. And then I would create this photo or put a photo on there and say, I'm looking to make a run to a thrift store just to drop off, I'm gathering up stuff to make that run. If you have anything that you need to get rid of and you don't have the time to drop it off, I'm making rounds in your city in the next week or this specific day. So send me a direct message and I can come by and help gather up that stuff. So you can let people know, like you just post it in the community group saying, I'm doing some cleanup, or I'm looking to build an audience. You can even say like, I'm looking to build an audience and I'm looking for inventory that you're wanting to get rid of. It's going to help me start my business. You can be completely direct, or you can just be more vague and say you're just helping do some clear out. Either way is fine. You create that post, and on Facebook Marketplace, when you go and create it, you have an option of sending it to just to like one, or you can send it to like 15 different groups at the same time. So you create the one post, you send it out, you respond those messages, set up a day, drive around and pick up that inventory. They're literally going to stick it on their porch, and you're doing them a huge favor because it's probably been in the trunk for the last like 6 weeks. They meant to drop it off. They have good intentions. They want to clean up their house. Or if they know you're doing this, they're like, oh, I need to go clean. You've got spring cleaning, fall cleaning, all these different time frames where you could just reach out and say, hey, you would be helping me out. Let me help you out. I'll come around and pick it up. And then you've got access to it. You sort through it. Anything that doesn't make sense for you to show, you can just set aside or donate that. And then the rest of it, you're just doing $1 starts. So now you've got access to all kinds of things. And it doesn't mean high expensive brands. People buy weird, unusual, fun, unique. So any of those kind of pieces, show them and offer it. And if they don't buy, that's okay. Set it down, move next item. And then you've got inventory that you have not spent a dime on, that you can be excited when it sells, regardless of what the selling price is. You're thanking them, you're helping them. They're helping you build your audience and your sales and like get to faster payouts and all kinds of stuff by selling a bunch of items. So anyways, that's what I would do. Run around, create that post, pick up the inventory, and you could even do that periodically if needed to do it more than once. So yeah.
Perfect. That's great advice. So, obviously one thing that is well talked about in the reseller community, especially by part-time resellers and people that are just getting started, is they get really excited when they see people doing pallet flipping, and they feel like that's the dream, like to get a pallet of inventory delivered to their house. Like it looks crazy fun, right? But you know that it's actually a lot of work, not only to process that pallet, but to find it in the first place. Get it delivered, get it processed, get it sold, how much work that is. I think a lot of resellers secretly wishes that they could try it at least once. But so knowing that caveat of it is a lot of work, it is really hard, if they still want to try, where do they get started doing their research to find places that sell pallets near them or within shipping distance from them? A lot of times we tell people, or people go in groups and they'll be like, how do I find pallets? And everyone's like, do your research. But the real question is, how do you do that research? Like what keywords are you looking for, or what questions are you asking to not get scammed?
Yeah, great questions. We do get asked that a lot, and I really love going into it and answering it. The thing about those questions is I feel like I need to better understand the person asking to be able to give them more direct advice for them. So, but we'll go into it regardless. So, because someone who it's going to have a lot to do with where you are and what your resources are. So first, start local. Look and see if you've got some sources locally. I know there's a place in Missouri that has pallets where you can go and pick them up there. I know there's one in California. I know there's a lot of different places. So first of all, you're going to want to do your research. If you can get it local, you're going to save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on shipping. So if you can do that, definitely look into the possibility of doing something local. If not, there's a lot of places that you can look into shipping. Just be aware of, like, when you're getting that pallet shipped in, make sure, let them know that you're in a residential area because you don't have a lift gate, or they're going to need a lift gate from that truck to get the pallet off the truck down to ground level so you can get it up into your garage or whatever. So, yeah, so a few details there. So first, start local. The next thing you're going to want to do with the research is you're going to want to ask them very specific questions as far as, like, okay, what forms of payment do they take? That's kind of a big deal. If they say that it's like wire transfer only, there are legit companies who use wire transfer, but you're not protected if you're sending your funds that way. So I would say if you're beginning, I wouldn't go there initially. I would start with one where you've got a secure form of payment, read their reviews, look into that company, do some research, call them. That is one thing that I don't think enough of us do. Get on the phone, call that number, and talk to the actual person. Get them on the phone and talk to them about the pallets, ask what types of inventory, what type of brands, what are the conditions like, what are your customers typically saying, what kind of feedback do you get, do you have any resources? Get those resources and call them. This is stuff that my husband does, and he's in there on the phone 2, 3, 4 days a week. He spends hours and hours calling one company after the next company after the next. If we buy 5 pallets in a week, he's probably reviewed 100 of those. 100 different pallets to then find 5 that we're interested in picking up. So don't be afraid of putting in the work and doing that, and ask other people, other resellers. It shouldn't be this like scary thing. Like, I know there's a lot of people that are like, I don't share my sources. Don't ask that. That's like, and I'm like, if I'm approached and I've never talked to somebody before, and the first message I get is, Jen, what are your source? I'm not going to lie. I feel like I'm being used. It's a lot of energy for me to ask all the right questions and try to find, give them some great direction. But if it's somebody that I know, if I've chatted with, if it's a mutual relationship, it's a win-win. I really do love helping people and answering those questions. So don't be afraid to ask, but also don't just reach out to somebody who has it and say, give me what you have. You've worked years and years for it. You put in all this time for it. I just want the information you have, and then I will never talk to you again. Don't do that to people.
Yeah. And that's amazing. Like for people to understand that, like, it takes hours and hours of research, and that's on a weekly basis. That's not like you find one source and that's like the honey hole forever. Like, you have to keep researching.
Yep.
You look at 100 to find 5. One person in the comments a while back asked, have you ever lost money on a pallet, and do you get to choose what's in the pallet?
Some companies we buy from are manifested. So sometimes we do get to choose, and we can say, okay, I want 5 of this bag and 10 of this bag and 15 of that, so you can go through. Some companies we buy through do have itemized lists where we can go through and say exactly what we're looking to buy and what the price point is. And so there is some of that. Most of them are like, if it's an unmanifested, nope, you have no say. And most of the time you get a few photos of like top layer or a brief description. So those are the ones where it's like, you could find amazing things, or you could find 75% box of Sheen. So if there's more risk, obviously we're not going to pay as much to get that pallet. As far as have we ever lost money on one, I feel like most of the time we're at least willing to put in the work enough that we're going to bare minimum break even, if not double. Our goal is to double our investment. If I spend $5,000 on a pallet, I expect for me to make $10,000 on that, so I can, double the investment because of the time and energy that it's going to put into that. We have got some bad ones. I think we're very careful on, like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. If you find a good company, even if they screw up, because nobody's perfect. We've run a company. We've been on that side of it where we are trying to do everything right. And we've still sent out a box that someone wasn't happy about something in the box or whatever. So when there are issues with a pallet or a box of inventory, reach out to them, give them a chance. Don't just slander them and trash them and say they're the worst ever. Give them a chance to make it right. Say, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I understood I was getting. Can you, and a lot of the time they're going to work with you on that. A lot of the time they will. So there was one we spent, I think it was $9,000 on, and this was like 3 boxes. It was 98 pair of Cartier sunglasses. So you're like, okay, if I can get, I see the retail, I know what these cost. They're brand new. They are like, that is an amazing brand. If I can pick them up for that price for almost 100 pair, $90 a piece, I know I can sell these between $300 to $500 a piece. I would make that deal all day, every day. Logically, it makes sense. We got that back. We, went and picked it up, got it back, got it in my office, and I took a photo. I've still got that photo of me sitting next to it, my cheesy grin. And then I started looking at them, and I didn't have those in hand for more than 10 minutes before I realized they were all fake. Every single one fake. So on that one, it's just like this gut wrenching feeling, like you just feel sick. You just dropped $9,000 and they are fake. But because it's a company we've worked with before, and it's very rare that we go back to them with any kind of concerns or issues, we understand how this works. We understand the game. We did contact them, and we were like, these were advertised as this, and they are not. And so they were like, you know what, Laura, we'll give you credit for it. Bring those back. And send them back to us and we will give you credit. So thank heavens,
Glad that worked out.
you've got to be careful, but be smart about it too. You can get some great deals, but yeah.
Awesome. So I had put another question. Somebody asked this question. We were pretty much answering it, so I put it up on the screen there, which was, are they consistent? And so sometimes they're not. So sometimes you have a good company and you can still get a bad box. So you still have to be really careful in what you pick, and then really careful, like you said, in how you deal with them to resolve issues. So we answered that one. And we're almost out of time. We did collect a couple of questions before the show started, and one was, how many pallets do you buy per month on average? Because I'm sure it's different every month.
Between 8 to 16. So year before last, we did buy 200 pallets in the year, and so that calculates to about 16. I think my husband bought 5 today. He ordered 5 of them today. He said 3 of them were clothing, 1 is shoes, and 1 of them's just boxes. Like we buy pallets of boxes, shipping boxes to pack everything out too. So yeah, it varies because we didn't buy last week or the week before that because we were traveling in PoshFest and all that. But this week we've got 5. So if you just go off of averages, it's about between 8 to 16 pallets per month.
Ooh. And like, what is your process when you get like this big pallet in? What's like the first thing you do? We kind of touched on it earlier a little bit, but you jump into the big box like a pile of leaves.
It's an adrenaline rush. It's a lot of fun. Every once in a while, Dan will sort them without me, and I kind of hate him for it. Most of the time, it's both of us out there, and we're both going through it. We're both like, all right, sorting it. So we've done it so many different times. We know when that pallet pulls up, we've got multiple different totes ready to go. So one of them is going to be discard. It's cheap China, no brand. It's Shein. It's stuff that we're not going to invest a lot of time and energy into moving. So we've got totes for the stuff that we're discarding, and then we've got stuff, the mid-range stuff, and then occasionally we'll set a few items aside if we're like, okay, we're going to have to get a little more money out of those items. Set those aside. We're photographing, listing all of those. So we kind of compartmentalize it. We jump in and we'll sort an entire pallet, 500 items in about 40 minutes. If it's a less exciting palette, it does take longer. For whatever reason, your energy kind of drops if it's just a lot of like junk. I would say most palettes, 500 items is about average. A lot of the time, about 1/3 of it, discard. Most of the time, you're tossing out about 1/3 of it. And by toss out, we still make money on that. So we take one of our empty pallets, all the stuff that we're discarding, all that Shein, all that stuff, everything that in there that we're not putting time into, we fill that pallet, we sell that locally. So we can throw a Facebook group out there, post saying, these are new items, new in package. It's Shein, it's low-end brands. Some may have damaged stains or issues or whatever. You're more than welcome to sort through it. It's $500 for the whole pallet. If you want 2 pallets, I can do 2 for $400 a piece or 3 for $300, whatever. We put our price break on there, and we'll have someone come local, pick them up, and they either do yard sales with them, fill a bag sales, or they'll take it back to their home country or ship it home or whatever. There's different people that come and buy those from us. So even the stuff that we're not putting time into, it's still something that you can sell and recoup some investment from.
Good. So, I love that. So not just like moving straight to donation, but like you could still find a way to get some value out of what you have.
Sponsor some local yard sales.
Yep. We got one more question in the chat, and I'll read it real quick, and that will be our last question since we're over time. What is your most used Vendoo feature since you have so much inventory?
Probably delisting and relisting. I have 3 posh closets, and the ability to take an item from one closet and merge it into the other, moving them around. I love how easy that is, and I use that every single day in Vendoo. So that's probably them. When I come in here, if I don't have new inventory photographed and ready to be moved in, because that's like the biggest thing, more new stuff coming in, it's moving them in and out of from one closet to the next. So yeah.
Very interesting, because we do have users that have more than one Poshmark closet, and also the relist and delist. I feel like I'm also a reseller, so I use Vendoo daily. So does a couple of our other teammates here at Vendoo. We don't just work here; we use it. And relist, delist, we're like constantly like, that is the most underutilized, under talked about, underhyped feature that we have is relist, delist.
Right.
that's going to keep your inventory fresh and help you make more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check Jen out. We're going to have linked her in the video, and she is on Whatnot. She is on Poshmark. She's actually on like all those platforms. But then also she's big on Instagram, and you can find really helpful videos on YouTube from her as well. So we really appreciate you taking your time and being on our podcast.
Absolutely. It's so fun to be here. I would do it again anytime. If you want more on the sourcing side, maybe we'll bring Dan in next time. But
Oh,
yeah,
perfect. He's fun to watch. He's doing good on the lives too.
he's doing good.
He's still
Yeah.
in there's like single Dan shows.
Yes, I know. He's like, we're doing a show. I'm going to do a show today. And I'm like, all right, do it. I've got so much going on, but if you want to take that on, let's go. So it's great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you again. Thanks for coming, everybody. Make sure to subscribe and check out our next podcast next month.